welcome to the Jamal Thomas Morning Show. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is indeed my show. I'm glad you guys can join me on this additional episode in this sacred space. Hope you guys are doing all right this morning. We have a damn good show for you today, or I have a damn good show for you today. I don't know why I keep using that period. We. But I have a damn good show for you today. I want to check one thing before. Okay, that's fine. And one more thing, and then we can get this boat rocking. A lot of news has come down the pike. I guess probably the biggest news is that Donald Trump once again backs off. Now, I'm putting backs off in quotes. But obviously, the White House is in complete disarray. And what I mean by complete disarray, you get the Trump administration. What's going on? This. What am I? Something's off. There we are. You get the Trump administration, who initially comes out and say, we are launching a freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. And we're going to call it Project Freedom. Freedom. I love that word. That word is so epic. But we're going to launch Project Freedom. And we are going to liberate shipping in the Middle East. Great. Question. How do you plan to do this? Right? Like, for all intents and purposes, your ability to open the strait was effectively non-existent, if we're being bluntly honest. And from the standpoint of ratcheting it up attacks, which I still suspect may be coming because there's an impasse that needs to be met that is, up to this point, not been clarified through military means. That for all intents and purposes, the U.S. remains deal incapable. There's that. And on top of the United States remaining deal or agreement incapable, Iran is stuck to its guns, standing up for the world, I may add, not to mention themselves, or let's say standing up for themselves, but also the world in lieu. And so the Trump administration is in a fix. How do I, President of the United States, the indispensable nation with $1 trillion military, extricate myself out of this situation without looking like an asshole? I don't have an answer for that. And it's clear by what's taken place and what has been coming out for the last couple of days that neither does the White House. Hell, what's been taking place for the last month or so. What's wild about it is Trump screams freedom of navigation, claims that the U.S. is going to bring ships out. I think they ended up getting 2 ships out. Those ships were effectively fired upon, and a U.S. warship was effectively fired upon, in which case the U.S. hauled ass. I forget the person who said it yesterday, but Iran, I think it was Carl Shaw. Iran, that's why the U.S. calls it that way, because they hauled ass. 48 hours after claiming freedom of navigation, Trump calls it quits and backs off. Rudderless, entirely rudderless, without the hint of strategic vision. The wild part is it's hard to have strategic vision when you're an empire. You go in thinking that you're effectively going to knock down a country of 90 million people within a couple of days. And then when it doesn't happen and you're floundering and you take a fallback position for a blockade that is wrecking the global economy. And yes, the U.S. will feel it. In fact, the reporting that's coming out is that even if they made a deal today, oil production won't change. Meaning it will take months for any notion of recovery going all the way back or past the midterms. And that's assuming, as I pointed out, it ends today. Which obviously is not going to be the case. Okay, what the hell is going on with the system? Give me 1 second. I'm getting a bug. Okay, that's better. All right. So what in the hell? Okay, here we are. So right here, even if oil production, even if the war stopped today, oil production will not recover by midterms. And that's assuming it ends now. That's assuming it ends now. And obviously there is no penchant will for that to end now. Here's the thing, what I think took place. It sounds like Trump needed a win. Trump was in a box, he was in a corner. He had no way to make military progress from the standpoint of the Strait of Hormuz. It is clear as day that we lost, especially considering that Iran is now holding on to the Strait of Hormuz. And he knows that the economic consequences of this stuff is clear and present. And if you renew hostilities against Iran, all of those delusional, speculators who are dealing in oil and all of these other commodities that haven't necessarily priced it into the market yet, because from their point of view, Trump will chicken out. Well, there is no way to chicken out of this. For all intents and purposes, you can claim victory and you can walk. Iran knows you lost the war. I would imagine the American public knows you lost the war. And to mention you started a war and lost that war. You started a war and then lost that war. Meaning, in a war of aggression that was unnecessary, you enacted this particular policy. This policy has reverberations on the United States, not to mention the rest of the world and the global market. And to make it even worse, there was no strategic vision behind the plan. And so your fallback, when the first particular part didn't work, was to effectively make a blockade on the world. How long do you think you can keep that up? That's the question. I don't have an answer for that. And truth be told, I still suspect that this is a lull before the storm. But we'll see. I mean, for all intents and purposes, going in against Iran was not necessarily the best idea in the world. It probably was the blunder of the century. And considering that Iran has now created a regulatory body around the Strait of Hormuz and controlling the Strait of Hormuz, it doesn't seem like they're giving that up anytime soon. So Trump, erratic, backs down. Now, let's put back down in quotes, because it seems like the plan was effectively to say, hey, we instigated Project Freedom. That's what we did. And even though our warship got fired upon, and the ships that we tried to send through got fired upon, we got two through. That's enough to declare victory. Our objectives are accomplished. The world is good. Problem. If that is indeed true, then why is Marco Rubio out here looking complete insane? He looks like a fucking idiot making this particular argument to the United Nations. You started a war. You lost that war. The booty that Iran took for losing that war is the Strait of Hormuz. You, after damaging your Gulf allies, and for that matter, the Europeans, are now, after bashing those Europeans, by the way, going and asking for help. That doesn't sound like you're A, in control, B, won the war, or for that matter, that Project, quote unquote, freedom was any level of success. This is Rubio. They're trying to create a United Nations Security Council resolution, which I strongly suspect Russia is going to veto. But nevertheless, they don't have anything better to do. So let's hear Rubio. What time is it? Okay, Kate should be coming up in a few minutes. Let's hear Rubio. This is Rubio begging the world for help. Here we are. This is Rubio begging the world for help. Let's see if I can get this to work right.
And I think it's a real test for the UN. right? As a function, as something that functions that can solve global problems. What is the purpose of the UN? The UN was supposed to be a place where you could peacefully resolve global conflict. Right now, you have a country who is unlawfully, criminally, and illegally taking possession of an international waterway and blowing up commercial vessels and putting mines in the water. I don't know if people appreciate like how outrageous this is, how unacceptable it is that any country would fire and try to sink commercial vessels or put mines in the water. Both of these things are illegal. And so we're going to take it to the UN, and we're going to give it another chance to be a forum in which we're not even asking people to like commit troops to the region and help blow up the Iranian boats. All we're asking them to do is to condemn it, to call on Iran to stop blowing ships, to remove these mines, and to allow humanitarian relief to come through because there's humanitarian aid that's trapped. That's it. This is a very modest request. And if you're telling me that the international community and hundreds of countries cannot rally behind that, then I don't know what the utility of the UN system is if it can't even.
Are you out of your mind? Are you out of your mind? Like, that's amazing. That is amazing. Like, psychopaths be psychopaths. It's astonishing. I would say that the level of shame that a person would, under normal circumstances, encounter would be crushing. It would break the spine of a normal individual to get out there and say some shit like that. The United States, to put this in context, and I don't need to repeat it, but God damn it, I need to repeat it just because that is so mind-blowing. Rubio has gone out and is trying to browbeat the United Nations to help the United States in a war that it started. The U.S. has been murdering Venezuelan fishermen. And Rubio is here saying it is outrageous that a country would bomb commercial vessels. You've literally been murdering fishermen. You've literally been murdering fishermen. And to make this even worse, you attacked them twice. First, in the 12-Day War, where you attacked a country that was in the middle of negotiations. And then in this war, where you, again, attacked a nation unprovoked. And your response is, this is outrageous that Iran has taken the shipping lane. It's outrageous that you attacked the fucking country. How about that? It is outrageous that this level of mendacity can appear on the world. This is humiliating. Do you honestly believe that the rest of the world don't see you? Do you really think that? Do you really believe that? And for one, I thought Project Freedom cleared the mines. I thought Project Freedom saved the day for commercial shipping. And yet, you are here not even on bended knee. You don't even beg right. You don't even beg right. You're begging from the perspective that everyone else around the world are idiots. They're not. They're not. This will get struck down. This veto will go nowhere. The United Nations, I would agree with you, is a pointless endeavor since there is no such thing as international law. And part of the reason there is no such thing as international law is for people like you. People like you. The man who would never be president of the United States. The child, little Marco. It's people like you and this psychopath administration, not to mention most of the administrations of the White House are psychopaths, but there's a particular quality in this one. There's a particular quality in this one. Mendacity. It's not a shocking trait for a political administration in general. Governments lie. But this is a different animal. Meaning, at the very least, afford me the assumption that I am more than brain made out of Swiss cheese. And lie to me in a way that at the very least makes sense. This is absurd. That is absurd. That is absurd. And to take absurdity even further, because you're like, yeah, man, there's no way you can jump the shark on that level of mendacity, that level of lying, that level of psychopathy. No, you could. So XF, not to be undone or not to be outdone by Marco Rubio, comes out and cannot confirm or deny reports of killer dolphins. Seriously. Right here. This is Hegseth explaining, I can neither confirm or deny killer dolphins in Iran.
These reports of kamikaze dolphins that we've heard about.
I haven't heard the kamikaze dolphin thing. It's like sharks with laser beams, right? The threshold of restarting is a political decision above my pay grade. What I'll say is it's low harassing fire right now. It feels like Iran is grasping at straws to try to do something across the southern flank. To your question, David, their command and control structure remains very fractured, and I think they're struggling to maintain control down echelon at the edge, but it's still pretty low level kinetics at this point in time.
And I can't confirm or deny whether we have kamikaze dolphins, but I can confirm they don't.
This is so dumb. It's amazing to me, the bravado that a man can show after losing a war. That's astonishing. Meaning, you have no cards. It's obvious you have no cards. Because Rubio wouldn't be out there begging the United Nations and other nations for help if you did have cards. You initiated a war. You didn't tell anybody you were going to initiate this war. You and Israel got in a room and said, hey, Syria's down, the door's open. Fuck it, let's do it. Let's attack a country. And then when that country punches you squarely in the balls, followed by punching you squarely in the nose, you backpedal. And you have no plan, no strategy, just bravado, with Donald Trump making these harebrained pronouncements that don't mean anything to anybody. Going from pillar to post, not knowing what to do. And it's clear as day that this White House is in complete disarray, as Brits will call it, shambolic. This is Trump putting out that he is backing away from the freedom of navigation. Project Freedom, in order to give negotiations time to play out. The problem with this, and just so you say, I don't want you to think I'm lying to you. The problem with this is rather obvious. Trump has maintained the blockade. He's maintained the blockade. So, yes, Iran is maintaining the blockade, but Trump is also maintaining the blockade. So this idea that you're somehow backing away while maintaining the blockade means that there are no negotiations in real terms. Based on the request of Pakistan Authority and other countries, let's be very clear. The U.S. pushed Pakistan in order to beg Iran for a ceasefire. Based on requests of Pakistan, based on the U.S. Based on the U.S. not knowing what to do. That's how this should read. Based on the requests of Pakistan and other countries, the tremendous military success that we have had during the campaign against the country of Iran, dude, you are begging the world for help. What are you talking about? Magnificent success. You failed at every objective. Like, that's the wild part to me, right? Like, again, if you need to lie to me, but make it good. Make me a believer. Don't insult my intelligence when reality is completely different. Oh, the world is great. And then the White House is on flames in the background. Don't do that. Don't do that. It looks dumb. And that's a hallmark of this particular administration where the lies are dumb. It's obvious. The king has no clothes. And yet the king parades about with his penis flailing in the wind. Just a little pee-pee. It's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. Like the idea that this is the White House. Like any notion of credibility, any notion of gravitas, any notion of these guys seeming like they have some idea of what the hell they're doing, out the window. And all of these back and forths by Trump makes it clear that they have no plan. They don't know what to do. And I don't know what's more dangerous, with them knowing what to do or been in complete disorder. Based on the requests of Pakistan and other countries, the tremendous military success that never was that we have during the campaign against the country, and additionally, the fact that great progress has been made towards a complete and final agreement with representatives of Iraq. That's not true. We have mutually agreed that while the blockade will remain in full force, Project Freedom, the movement of ships through the Strait of Hormuz, will be postponed for a short period of time to see whether agreement can be finalized and signed. More like our ships were fired upon, we got nothing accomplished, and we hauled ass. We have no plan going forward. There's no strategy at work. There is no bright person in the room. And all of these people are effectively lying to the press to maintain some sort of American prestige and dignity after being beaten by regional power. That's where we are. That's where we are. So just pointing out, this is absurd. And it would be utter comedy. If I showed this in a comedy, you would think this is too outlandish. There's no way that a government would do this. There's no way people would be this much buffoonery in the context of an administration. A child with a gun and nukes. There's no way anybody would ever believe this to be true. So there's no point in us ever even putting us in a movie or even in a comedy. This is real. These people are lunatics. And flamboyantly lying lunatics. It's just astonishing. I mean, it's just amazing. Like, again, I get governments lie. Fair enough. I accept that grudgingly. It's not that I like it. I accept it. But this is other level. This is other level. Donald Trump is all over the place. Donald Trump's all over the place. And because the president is all over the place, his goons are also all over the place. And it doesn't seem like anybody knows the script or the plan. That is terrifying. To make this even worse for the Trump administration, obviously midterms are coming up. And in the context of midterms coming up, when you have like 70% of farmers saying they can't afford fertilizer, when you have, more than 60% of the population saying their income and their situation is much worse, meaning they're poor. When you see Trump, 40 points underwater on the issue of the economy, the thing that he actually got elected on, this is not going well for the White House. And I would imagine that Iran, who's been putting out like Lego videos back at us, meaning reflecting us back at us, have to know markets, midterms. Not to mention the American population feels some kind of way about the war. These are pressures that are being applied to the Trump administration. And apparently the Trump administration didn't think about this before launching the war. From the standpoint of polling, the American public is very upset. It's very upset. Personally, I don't know what the American public thought it was going to get from a man that tried to overthrow the government of the United States the first time around. By the same token, Democrats weren't that better of an option, if we're being bluntly honest. And so here we are. I would even make a case of saying Trump is a great president. He's a great president because he's accelerating the downfall of the American empire. Move after move after move. Everything that he does is providing an accelerant, whether it's weaponization of the dollar, whether it's the wars in Ukraine, whether it's the wars in Iran, whether it's attacks on Venezuela, whether it's attacks on Yemen. This peace president who came in holding a dove in one hand and a lily in the other has been a wartime president doing any and everything in his power to maintain hegemonic control of the globe. And failing in Ukraine, failing against China, and yes, failing against Iran. It doesn't mean that the war is over. It more so means that the idea of the U.S. escalating as a way out seems farcical. The idea of using the global markets and crashing the global economy and pointing to Iran seems absurd, especially when it will reverberate back on the United States. None of this entirely makes all that much sense, short of these people are comically stupid and yet have nukes. This is America apparently giving its point of view on the Trump administration. Listen to what this guy's saying. This guy has been, he's very entertaining. And I've watched him on CNN for a while when he's doing polling. Listen to what he says about how the American public is looking at this.
Out over the weekend was the ABC News Washington polls. You were mentioning the CNN poll of polls, and of course, the poll of polls is made up of individual polls, and one of them that just came out over the weekend was the ABC News Washington Post Ipsos poll, and you can see it right here. I mean, this just tells the story, right? The lowest net approval ratings ever for the president of the United States. That is approval minus disapproval. The lowest previous record, according to the ABC News Washington Post poll, was Trump was 24 points underwater. That was all the way back in term number one. My beard at that particular point did not have any gray in it like it does today. But guess what? As my beard has turned to gray, Trump's numbers have fallen to a new record low, according to the Washington Post ABC News poll. He is now 25 points underwater on the net approval rating. That is the lowest ever that he has ever been at. And so it's not much of a surprise to me that the CNN poll of polls is reflecting that with the record high disapproval rating. Wow. You were mentioning.
That is amazing. It's not shocking, but it is amazing. It is amazing. Yes, long story short, the GOP is going to have hell on its hands when they run in the midterms. And Donald Trump is going to be an albatross around their throat the entire time. Meaning, keep in mind, part of the reason that Donald Trump, and I'm going to move on to another story, but part of the reason that Donald Trump was able to have the level of political success that he had more to do with the fact that he had popular support. I mean, A, he beat the stuffing out of Kamala Harris. There's that. B, many of his supporters were willing to crawl over hot glass in order to vote for Donald Trump. The other Republicans knew it. And because the other Republicans knew it, they put their lot in with Donald Trump, whether they liked him or not. If you remember, Vance at one point said he was like Hitler. And then all of a sudden got his mind right. Rubio was against him. Rubio got his mind right. Meaning all of these people, for issues of political power, decided for political expedience to lump their lot in with Trump. The other Republicans effectively did exactly the same thing. And when they run, it's going to be a wipeout. And I don't know if Donald Trump has considered what that means to be politically wiped out in Congress, but Lord knows he will find out. He will find out. I want to go to another story, but let me check out the chat first. What's going on, chat? And we have super chats. Look, if you guys really enjoy the content, you find yourself coming here often, you can like it, you can share it, you can subscribe to the channel. All of those things help support the content. You can support this content, PayPal, Patreon, super chat memberships, buy me a coffee. I think that is all of them. But you have my complete thanks for any support you give to this channel. As you can see, we've been making changes in regards to the output. This channel is also now on Rumble, so there is that. Shout out to Robbie for helping me with that. Yeah, we're growing. We're going to keep growing. We are back on the horse. Perhaps a little less of me, but nevertheless, still here. Let's see, what is this? There is this is Mr. Ripley. Mr. Ripley, thank you, Mr. Ripley, $5 donation. There's a George C. Scott movie about weaponized dolphins from the 1970s, Day of the Dolphin. Not perfect, but always fun to watch George's work. Well, I never thought that I'd see a Secretary of War. Again, I love that. I know a lot of people complain about that. I love that term. Secretary of War, Department of War. That's what it used to be called. And let's be honest, that's more honest. That removes the propaganda associated with it, right? I appreciate that. Tell me what you are. Tell me what you are. Right. So we have Frank Frist. Is that right? Frank Frio. I'm sorry. Forgive my blindness. Frank Frio with I think this is a $2 donation, $3 donation. Damn it. Network is no longer satire. I know, right? I know. It's just amazing. Like the Biden administration was obviously deranged. The Biden administration, to put it in context, got us involved. Joe Biden was the one who thought the idea of BRICS was funny. Okay, not anymore, right? And Joe Biden seemed to be completely out of his mind. Completely out of his mind. And yet, it's not that I think Trump is worse. I mean, look, the reality of it is people are acting as if Donald Trump is independent or is unique. And I would agree with you that his manner is unique, meaning this kind of brash kleptocracy, overt kleptocracy, habitual lying, with seemingly not caring that everybody knows he's a habitual liar with no credibility. That is amazing. Most presidents even kept a big leap of credibility, even as they lied remorselessly through their teeth. So yeah, okay, maybe that's a little bit different. That's a stylistic difference. But if you're talking about policy, okay, well, knocking over Syria was under Democrat, right? Or at the very least, the attempt to knock over Syria was under Democratic and Republican administrations. This idea of going after Iran were under Democratic and Republican administrations. I hope you get my point. U.S. policy had a specific direction that it was going. Whether or not another president would have pulled the trigger or not is almost irrelevant to the point that it was going in a particular direction. And here we are. Here we are. You may say Trump's attack was inopportune, but let's be clear. That attack was always in the making at the moment that the U.S. and Israel could do it. Well, this obviously wasn't the moment that they could do it, seeing as the way it's turning out. We have Golden Nation membership. Shout out to you, Golden Nation. Thank you. Jamal, my brother, you are absolute best. Thank you for all you do. Shout out to my Helen. You are my life. Oh, that's sweet. That's sweet. Shout out to my Helen. You're the love of my life. Shout out to you, Helen. I hope you are great. Apparently, you have a man that loves you and is giving a shout out to you on a international platform. You're awesome, Helen. I don't know you, but the fact that Golden Nation knows you. I'm sorry, Golden Fallon. I'm sorry. I'm lying. Give me some grace. Golden Fallon. The fact that Golden Fallon is putting this out there. I'm assuming you are a fantastic person. So shout out to you. I want to go to another story. I don't think Kit is going to join me today, but Garland is going to be here at 8:00. So let's keep this boat rocking. So in another story, which warmed my heart, actually, I think it's two stories, and it kind of dovetail. So Israel is reporting, Times of Israel, and it's not just Times of Israel. I've seen the story a few places, but it's fascinating. Speed of war. Anybody that has watched coverage of the Ukraine war has noticed something super interesting in that war. Well, for one, the U.S. would often say, why isn't Russia making more progress? Obviously, they're a paper tiger. Obviously, they're fighting with shovels. Obviously, Putin is about to commit suicide. Obviously, Putin is wandering through the Kremlin, worried about coup attempts. Like, this is the stuff they're saying, right? But one of the things that you've seen take place is a transformation of war. You're seeing that in Yemen, fighting back, America's superpower, basically, a woman laying on her back, kicking her feet. Get off me. No means no. No means no. That was Yemen, right? That was Ansarullah. And yet it worked, right? They train women to do that for a reason, because the shit works. Like, oh my God, you nearly kicked me in the balls. I gotta get away, gotta get away. Effectively, the US was able to murder a lot of people. True, they were not able to pacify Ansarullah and eventually toss Israel over the bus in order for Ansarullah to stop attacking us. In the context of Iran, again, very similar, right? You have all of these military bases and a strategy in the 1980s to surround Iran with military bases in order to pacify Iran, so any attack or any conflict would be a fait accompli. Not to mention, those bases were supposedly there to protect those particular Gulf states who were, let's say, living at the behest of America. Well, we're not in the 80s. We're in 2026. Not just time has progressed, but the way war is waged. And bases that at the time might have been an asset ultimately became a liability and a catcher's mitt for Iranian missiles and drones. That's what it boiled down to, right? Same thing with the shipping. You have all of these aircraft carriers, these things are used to project power, and they're an intimidating weapon. Up until the fact you have hypersonic missiles that can put a hole in the side of it and sink that ship to the bottom of the ocean with 5,000 Americans dead in lieu of it. Times have changed. The potential, the opportunities, or the way the war is waged has changed. And if you're looking at Russia, or for that matter, even the war in Azerbaijan and Armenia over the Nagorno-Karabakh, drones played a heavy factor in that. Flying killer robots that are effectively flying through the battlefield, looking down and waiting for somebody to kill. And you can see it take place in Ukraine over and over and over again. I watched so many videos of Ukrainians effectively being murdered by drones, or for that matter, Russians being chased by drones on a motorcycle trying to get away. Meaning drones has become an instrumental and key and lethal part of the battlefield. And the moment that you add in fiber optic wire, which was something that the Russians invented and added to their drones in order to prevent electronic warfare, all bets are off. This makes sense in the Ukraine-Russian conflict. And it's changed the way they fight, considering you have satellite coverage that's watching everything, and you have drones that can effectively hit at a moment's notice, or for that matter, missiles that can hit at a moment's notice, with drones acting as this kind of view of the sky. Israel has been on a murderous, bloody campaign. Not content to stick with a genocide, they have also been trying to Gazify southern Lebanon. Problem. Technology advances. And Hezbollah has started to implement FPV drones, basically first-person viewer drones, bought off the counter to very lethal effect. Imagine a drone flying around, go into a house, sees an Israeli soldier, bam. Drone flying around, sees an Israeli tank, bam. And by the way, they were doing the same thing in Ukraine. There would be drones that would fly into vehicles in order to blow up the vehicle, or drones that would, sitting on the street, pop up, hit a vehicle when the vehicle is coming through. Meaning these things are lethal. And finding a retort for this has not been easy. Not in the Ukraine conflict, and not against Hezbollah. Meaning Hezbollah has started to use the same level of technology. And in using this technology, Israel seemed completely unprepared for this new eventuality on the battlefield. Times of Israel came out with this report. They're not the only one who are reporting it. But I have to be honest, it warmed my heart. I don't have any sugar, so I can't have coffee. But it warmed my heart. Hunted by drones. It should have seen coming. Israel now sees its Lebanon strategy at risk. Because the reality of it is, despite the overwhelming firepower that the Israeli military has at its disposal, it, for whatever reason, didn't foresee Hezbollah using this particular tactic to go after the Israeli military. And they've been doing so with pretty positive effects. Meaning, if you can't jam it, and they're so small, you get them off the shelf, what do you do when your military strategy is entirely revolving around overwhelming force, overwhelming firepower, and control of the skies. That is no longer the case. The drones are low flying. The air defense that Israel uses is not necessarily going to work for these per se. And because they're FPV drones, they have a wire associated with it. So electronic warfare doesn't necessarily knock out the drone in the way that it would if it didn't necessarily have a wire associated with it. Again, this was technology that the Russians introduced into the war in Ukraine. And now Hezbollah has introduced this into the defense of southern Lebanon against the Israeli aggressor. This colony of squatters have a fight on their hands. And now they're like, hey, this is a problem. Where did these guys get drones from? Nobody thought that they would actually use fly-by-wire drones to defend southern Lebanon. Who knew that they would do this? We had no idea that the savages had this capability. That's the way they look at it, right? What's interesting about this is the article points out that there is no solution. Like, they're pointing out that we don't know what to do about this. This is putting our Gossification, this is putting our second genocide at risk. They're fighting back. Who knew they were going to fight back like this? Who knew they were going to innovate? We had no idea that they could innovate. We thought the billions of dollars that we get from America to murder all of these Arabs, that would be sufficient. And that is no longer the case. They're fighting us back. And when you add in the damage that Iran effectively did to Israel, meaning Israel may try to hide the damage that they were taking from that war in Iran, but obviously Iran was hitting its shots. And regardless of what the Pentagon is telling the media, the reality of it is that the United States and Israel took a beating from Iran. You can look at the military bases and the damage that they did to those military bases. Not to mention, if you've noticed, the ships, American warships, are very skittish of getting close to Iranian shores. Hashtag reasons. What I'm pointing out is that regardless of Israel's want for these military campaigns in order to create their greater Israel and effectively steal land and murder the people, whether they're in the West Bank, whether they're in Gaza, or for that matter, whether they're in Lebanon. And they won't just be happy with southern Lebanon any more than Hitler was happy with Czechoslovakia or Poland, for that matter. I'm trying to point out they're getting mauled in southern Lebanon. Sure, they are murdering a lot of people, but they were doing that already. The difference in this is that Hezbollah has found a tool, a weapon, a device that they can effectively use to, at the very least, affect that's freaking out the Israeli military and the losses that they've encountered in southern Lebanon. I wish I had some coffee. I don't have any coffee with me. Or do have coffee. I don't necessarily have sugar. But needless to say, this is not going according to plan. This is not going according to plan. And good. Evil people shouldn't prosper. Evil people, evil countries should not prosper. I am firm on that point. I want to move to another story. So something interesting is taking place. Well, several interesting things are taking place, I suppose. But something strange. This is so yesterday, not only did Iran, the United States invaded the Strait of Hormuz. They were told not to do that. They went with this idea of Project Freedom. Again, this was a kabuki theater. Once kabuki theater was over with, Donald Trump came out and declared, yeah, we're pretty much done, blah, blah, blah. All right. Iran fired on the UAE after, let's say, the UAE working with Trump in order for this nonsense plan of invading the strait. Iran fired on the UAE. The UAE had a pipeline that was able to get around the Strait of Hormuz. I remember being on air, pointing out that the first thing that was going to be attacked was that pipeline. And that was the first thing that was attacked, that pipeline. If you have something that is going to circumvent our blockade, we need to destroy the thing that you're using to circumvent our blockade. Basic tactics. That didn't happen until it became very clear that the UAE was effectively working with the United States very closely. Iran carried out missile and drone operations against the UAE. At least that is what was stated, meaning that was the headline. Iran is saying something slightly different, which is a little bit weird. So Iran came out and released a statement. They said, quote, "We have not carried out any missile or drone operations against the UAE. We deny the UAE Ministry of Defense report." They say the UAE, quote, "has become one of the main American and Zionist bases and, quote, a nest for American and Zionists," unquote. Also, quote, "If any action is taken from the soil of the UAE against Iran's islands, ports, or coast, we will give a crushing and regretful response." Okay, that's interesting. Now, is Iran threading the needle? Meaning, it seems, at the very least, mind you, I'm in Richmond, Virginia, right? So I am not there observing it. I am perched at the edge of the world with a certain amount of distance between me and the thing to which I'm observing. So there's a bit of night blindness associated with it. By the same token, it seemed that Iran did attack the UAE. I think what they're trying to say, though, is, look, we weren't attacking you. We were attacking the U.S. military bases, meaning we're creating a distinction between you versus Americans and that base. If you respond to us, and if there are attacks coming from your soil, we will pummel you into the ground. Now, the UAE received a lot of Iranian strikes anyway, which is why part of the reason that they were so up in arms about what was effectively taking place, especially with Saudi Arabia back in Pakistan's in the negotiations. They felt some kind of way about it. Hell, they even gave Pakistan like a bill because Pakistan was being a neutral mediator in all of this when they felt like they were being aggrieved. The UAE pulls out of, damn it, it'll come to me in a moment. It dropped out of my mind. But they pull out of oil cartel. Jesus Christ, it fell out of my mind. It'll come to me in a moment. In pulling out, the question to a lot of people was, why? Like, why would you pull out of this cartel that you've been a part of since what, 70s, I believe? I could be wrong. And OPEC, thank you, OPEC plus. And in pulling out of OPEC, they effectively said, we are no longer going to work with Saudi Arabia on this front and the other OPEC countries. We are going to go it alone. It is believed that the United States was effectively working with, or that they made deals, let's say it that way. Because keep in mind, many of these nations, Kuwait, UAE, have not necessarily been able to get out oil, meaning it's a hit to their revenue. And they needed dollars. Now, the thought was that the United States effectively made a deal for Qatar to pull, for the UAE to effectively pull out of OPEC. And in pulling out of OPEC, we'll get, let's say, what it needs and what it requires. Who knows? What I do know is that for all intents and purposes, there was a split between Saudi Arabia and the UAE. The UAE pulls out. The UAE seemingly believed that it would be able to, control its oil short of or beyond OPEC, which was always in doubt because even the UAE wouldn't necessarily want the oil price to drop significantly. So the amount that they can effectively pump out will be relatively marginal. What's interesting with this, though, is Iran bombed the pipeline. So it's like, yeah, we're getting out of this. We're working with the U.S. The U.S. tries to run the Strait of Hormuz, basically tries to run the blockade with a tanker. They claim this Freedom Project or whatever the hell it is. Iran hits the UAE pipeline. Of course, the UAE bitches and moans. Iran comes out and says, hey, what are you talking about? We were going after America. Going after America. Who knows? Either they're trying to thread the needle with this, or some screwy false flag is taking place. But I don't know why that would be a false flag. They're already in a state of war. It doesn't need to be a false flag. And especially considering the blockade is still going on, it doesn't need to be a false flag. And considering that the U.S. tried to run a blockade and the U.S. is working hand in hand with the UAE, I don't know why they would need to. I don't know why a false flag will be necessary. But long story short, this is chaos. And we're still in this kind of weird space of not entirely knowing what's going to take place. I assume that the attacks will resume at some point, especially when the US, Israel, get prepared. But right now, we're in this weird standoff where the US effectively is blockading Iran, but ultimately Iran is blockading the Strait of Hormuz. Both blockades is effectively wrecking the global economy. You can look at what's taking place in Europe. You can look at what's taking place in Africa. You can look at what's taking place in Asia. You can look at what's taking place in South America. All of these places the effects are deleterious to any of these countries and all of these countries' economies, including our own. So, for some reason, the markets still believe that Trump is going to chicken out. And when he chickens out, all of this is going to be reversed and rolled back. The problem with this is not a tariff. This is not something that the president could just sign a letter and says, okay, this tariff is off. This particular thing is no longer valid. This is a war. And in the context of it being a war, you can't turn it off when you want to. Nor are missiles being fired at ships conducive to trade. Nor is it conducive to trade. So there is that. I want to go to another story. One of the other interesting story, well, I think I went over that, the UN Security Council. They're effectively trying to push the UN Security Council to vote against Iran. I don't think Russia and China is going to agree with that. And I got to be honest, they think the rest of the world are idiots. Something else is taking place. Arachi, Iran's foreign minister, is going to China. He's going to China. Now, he has been making rounds. He's been all over the place. Oman, Russia. He's now going to China. And this trip is taking place before Donald Trump arrives in China. Now, Trump arriving in China is super interesting. Trump went after countries that ostensibly trade with China, right? So you're going after Venezuela. You're going after Iran. You're going after Russia. You're going after these particular countries. You accomplish your objectives in stealing a world leader, kidnapping a world leader in Venezuela. You thought that Iran was Venezuela of the Middle East, apparently, and you found that to be lacking. How are you threatening military force against China when you couldn't take on Iran? And when you're going to Xi Jinping, and it's obvious that your hard power is not necessarily sufficient to deal with China. I mean, for God's sake, what does it look like if China is putting up 400 or 500 missiles a day at your military bases that you've decided to surround them with? It seems like it would go nuclear, and it seems like that's the worst case for everybody. So it seems like you have no cards unless you're willing to end the world. What is that conversation like when Trump goes? Now, Arachi is there today, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure how long he's going to stay in Beijing. But obviously, he's going to be talking about strategic concerns, and the war being one of those strategic concerns. Now, whatever deals is made between Iran and China, you have to imagine that Iran, China, and Russia are working almost in coordination with one another. If not, as a unit, at the very least, in coordination with one another, with Russia and China having vested interest in inflicting a strategic feat on the United States. We'll see what happens. I'll bring somebody on tomorrow to have a conversation about what that meeting was about. But right now, I see my man here, the one, the only, the man himself, Garland Nixon. How you doing, Garland? You doing okay, man?
Great, man. Absolutely fantastic. Great morning.
I always happy that you're here. Garland Nixon, political analyst, radio host. He also hosts the Garland Nixon Show. It is a damn good show. In fact, Garland and I host the show, or will be hosting the show on Fridays, every Friday, as a weekly roundup. So thank you, Garland. Thank you for joining me, man. I was going through this. Well, there are a few things. I was going through this. Where is it? I was going. Well, Arachi being in China, there was that, but there was also this oddity about Project Freedom, and I as I tell the audience, I don't know what's more terrifying: the fact that there is no plan, or if there was a plan, meaning Donald Trump comes out and says we're going to do Project Freedom, freedom of navigation through the Strait of Hormuz. A battleship apparently goes, or a missile ship goes, gets fired upon. I think they get 2 ships through. The ship flees, meaning the U.S. Warship flees. Iran obviously was shooting at that ship, and Iran took pop shots at the UAE. At least that's the reporting. And Trump, 2 days later, after boosting freedom of navigation through the Strait of Hormuz, says we're going to put that on pause. We were completely victorious, but we're going to put it on pause, and we're going to give chance for negotiations, despite the fact that he's not removing the blockade. And it doesn't seem like there are negotiations going, at the very least on the overt level, maybe behind the scenes. But this is so shambolic. He seems to be in complete disarray. Give me your thoughts on this. What do you think is going on that is this back and forth, this inability to pick a policy or pick a strategy and run with it? What do you think is taking place behind the scenes? I mean, obviously, you can know it's a flat fact, but what's on your mind?
It looks like a kind of a frenzied panic, right? A
Yes.
frenzied panic response, and as I love to say, panic's not a plan. Panic's what you do when your plan doesn't work. And
Yep.
so there now, you can just kind of picture people. What do you think? I don't know. Let's try. Oh, I know. I've got a name here for something, Project Freedom. Now all we got to do is find something to apply to that name. You know what I mean? It's like Project Freedom. It's always something about liberty or Project Freedom, Project Eagle, Project Stars and Stripes. Number one, you have to come up with some patriotic sounding name. And then it doesn't matter what you really do. You just come up with a patriotic sounding name for your project and you move forward. Project Stars and Stripes and Liberty and George Washington or something like that. Then you come up with some absurd, preposterous plan to apply to your name because it's nothing but a narrative. They've become like the Biden administration where they were all narrative and there was really never any substance to what they were doing. And that's all we're seeing. A panicked, response. Also, I'll add this. I think that there are people calling them. I remember reading something about Trump talking to Jack Keane telling him, oh, you've got to do a blockade. And I understand that maybe where the blockade came from. So you've got a panicked guy with no plans. And you've got a bunch of idiots on the phone with him. Try this. That'll work. All right, let's name it Project Freedom. Well, that doesn't work. Somebody else calls. Oh, hey, try this. That'll work. It's just panic. They don't know what to do. All of their, plans of easily victory have fallen apart. The United States can no longer dictate terms to people. And
Yes.
and that's was their only play. Their only play was always this. Well, we've got power, so we tell everybody what to do, and people believe it. And they do what we tell them to do or else. And now that people are saying, nope, you're going to have to do the or else part. When you tell us what we have to do, the answer is no, and you're going to have to force us to do it. They can't really do that because that would require taking lots of casualties. And when your wars are wars that the people are behind, when your wars are just wars, according that the people believe, the people are willing to take casualties. When you got some cockamamie, oh, it's for to help the protesters. Oh, no, wait a minute. Ballistic missiles. Nukes. That's it. We're going to settle on nukes. We're going with weapons of mass destruction again. When that's what you're doing, the people are not behind you. You can't take casualties. And any serious military action is going to have to take casualties. So that's my thoughts on all of it.
Agreed. And it is, I'm going to play a clip for you. You're going to love this. This is little Marco So the United States has decided to go to the UN Security Council to effectively beg for a condemnation of Iran. And in the context of the UN Security Council, to effectively get a resolution to sanction Iran and demand that it opens up the Strait of Hormuz. I am fascinated by this. The level of mendacity is breathtaking. And Rubio says it with a straight face. My mom used to always say, I never want you to be a lawyer or politician. And Rubio is the spitting image as to why. Listen to this. And I want to get your take on what is being said here, because this is, you're going to fall off your chair.
UN, right? As a function, as something that functions to that can solve global problems. What is the purpose of the UN? The UN was supposed to be a place where you could criminally and illegally taking possession of an international waterway and blowing up commercial vessels and putting mines in the water. I don't know if people appreciate like how outrageous this is, how unacceptable it is that any country would fire and try to sink commercial vessels or put mines in the water. Both of these things are illegal. And so we're going to take it to the UN and we're going to give it another chance to be a forum in which we're not even asking people to like commit troops to the region and help blow up the Iranian boats. All we're asking them to do is to condemn it, to call on Iran to stop blowing ships, to remove these mines, and to allow humanitarian relief to come through, because there's humanitarian.
That's amazing. Right? Like, that's amazing. Give me your thoughts on that. I'm not even going to comment on it.
A couple of things come to mind.
Commentary on the audience.
You know, the absurdity of the U.S. now invoking the UN as a place where we go to resolve legal issues. Let's start here. A lot of people don't know this. During the 1980s, the United States illegally mined the harbors of Nicaragua. Nicaragua apparently went to international court. The United States was found guilty. The United States right now owes reparations to Nicaragua for mining their harbors illegally, and the United States has never paid. Of course, they're shooting at Russian. You know, the Europeans are firing at Russian maritime commercial vehicles constantly, and they're, you know, proud of it. Hooray, we hit another one. So, and by the way, under the international law, the worst crime, the most horrible crime you can commit is what? A war of aggression, right? Because all other crimes, you know, emanate from that and blah, blah, blah. So the bottom line is this: you're going to, say, hey, we don't have to go by the UN. In fact, John Bolton was like, we should just blow up the UN. So we got all these people telling how bad they hate the UN. And all of a sudden you get in a jam where you're getting your butt kicked, you're laying on the ground, and now you're screaming and calling, help, UN, get me out of this. This guy's beating me to death. Yeah, I don't think the UN's coming.
No, I don't think the UN is. I don't think the UN is coming either. I agree with you. Like, I mean, it's outrageous. Like, even this idea of it's outrageous that that Iran is blowing up commercial shipping. They were murdering fishermen in the Caribbean. Like, they didn't think twice about it. They didn't have any issue with doing it. None of that stuff. And a month later, or 2 months later, maybe 3, my timing is off. He is here screaming for help and screaming and blaming Iran for doing something similar that the U.S. did, but is in response to the U.S. war of aggression that Rubio seemed to completely ignore. That's amazing. That's just amazing.
There's something else I just thought of. You know what that is? The U.S. position has always been the world is a hierarchy, right? No, you know how China and Russia says everybody. Now, of course, it's not completely realistic, but they say the foundation of our policy, China, win-win. We have to treat everybody as equal. We have to respect everybody, right? I mean, that's rhetoric. Power is what it is. Right. But the U.S. position is the world is a hierarchy. And we are above the hierarchy. We're not even part of the hierarchy. We create the hierarchy. We make the rules for the hierarchy. And everybody has to do what we tell us. And then we assign people within the various levels on the totem pole of the hierarchy, right? So everybody's got to do what we say. Who cares about the UN? International law, none of it. We're above all of that stuff. This is an admission that they are not above the hierarchy anymore. The person who's above it all, the master of all, doesn't have to ask anybody for help. The U.S. is the one that dictates. In fact, they say to people, you can and can't do this. And when the UN says, hey, the UN rules say they can't. Oh, yeah, we're going to sanction the members of the UN if they even so much as say Israel's doing something wrong. And we're going to sanction their families. Oh, International Criminal Court, you're going after that? Sanction you and your families. The United States says we punish the UN and anybody in the UN that goes against our dictate. And after all of that, they've got their head down, their tail between their legs, and they're like, you think maybe we could get a hand to UN? We're kind of screwed right now. After all of this, it is great in that it is now an unofficial admission that they don't have the power to dominate anymore. It is truly an interesting time now that Iran has beat the stuffing and the hubris out of the empire.
Yeah. Well, I mean, beat the stuffing, yes, the hubris. I don't know what that like, the fact that Ruby, he needs to beg better. That is not the begging that a man needs to do, right? It's like, yeah, I cheated on you, but I need to be strong in this moment. And I don't want to admit to the fact, like, you know what I mean? It's like, you did something wrong. You screwed up. You need help, and you can't bring yourself to do it. I'll tell you this: when I think it was like 5 or 6 years ago, when I was with my wife, I had a medical issue. I was I had lost like 70% of my eyesight that night. I knew I needed help. My response was to tell my wife, "Hey, I'm going to the ER. I can't see." She's like, "Really?" I say, "Yes." And I get in the car and drive. Now, everything in me wants to ask for help in that moment, right? It's like, obviously, I need you to take me to the ER, but I can't ask. And it's kind of that, right? It's like this level of hubris of, okay, we can't do what we said we were going to do. We need help doing it, but we can't just ask for help because we started a war. It's just, wow. It's the way the empire talks, but it seems that it becomes more and more hollow as time goes on, with the president just screeching stuff online without the capability of doing anything in real life. Just wow.
Yeah, because you know what it is? While you're trying to still play tough guy, everybody's looking at you saying, if you were a tough guy, you wouldn't be asking me for help, exactly. Number one. And number two, in case you haven't realized this, we've all been watching this fight. We've been watching you get your nose bloodied, your eyes, you got a shiner on one eye, your lips bleeding. So we've been watching you get beat up for the last month or so. And you come stumbling over here saying, can you give me a hand, still playing like you're tough. Like we didn't see you get beat up. Like we don't really know. You don't want to go back into this fight, not just because of gas prices, because you ain't sure how well you'll do. You lost 17 aircraft in the last 10 days of the fight that we know of, and then you ducked out. You did not duck out because you were winning. So everybody knows the truth. And so you're still walking around with your chest out, being tough, and everybody's like, why don't you just come clean? But it's not that they can't come clean for external reasons. They can't come clean for internal reasons. Isn't it amazing how much of this is domestic? That Trump and the people being all tough, they can't look at Congress with their head down and say, guys, we lost and we got to act like it. Oh, by the way, there is a lot of stuff out. People can look at English Al-Mayadeen. There is a lot of discussion online that they are working, I don't know if they're good at it, getting closer, and there's talking, and there's a lot of going, which doesn't surprise me. There's a lot of discussion behind the scenes now of trying to get some kind of deal. What I read was the United States said, we want 20 years for you to freeze your nuclear program, and there's talk of maybe 12, which I'll put it to you like this. Let me say this. If I were Iran and I could get lots of stuff that I was comfortable with, I'd take a freeze if I could get a whole lot of other stuff. The problem is not, to me, let me add this. The problem is not what's in it. The problem, as you know, is this. Who'd ever trust the United States? How do you ensure that they ain't going to cheat, that they ain't going to do this for a couple of months and then come back and try to sucker punch you again? In fact, it's almost guaranteed.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm not a warmonger, right? And for all intents and purposes, I hate this notion of war. I don't like countries attacking other countries. By the same token, Iran didn't start this fight. And the US was always coming. And I don't believe for a moment that any deal that the United States makes under these terms, they're going to stick to, because they didn't stick to any other deal. I mean, we've had the JCPOA. We've had the second JCPOA, we've had the second JCPOA. I mean, meaning they never, that's wrong. They've had the JCPOA. Trump got rid of the JCPOA. They never went back to the JCPOA. I guess I'm pointing out that there's nothing to believe that the U.S. is going to be an honest actor, because the U.S. hasn't been an honest actor, right? And so meaning it's like, okay, this is a temporary freeze, while Israel and the U.S. builds up again in order to do the exact same thing. Again, I don't know. I am not the one with the barrel and the gun to my head or my people dying. So take it with a grain of salt. By the same token, if they need to inflict a strategic defeat, it's now. And making a deal with a country that is deal incapable doesn't seem wise. I could be wrong. I live here. I know my country.
I agree. But there's a couple of things. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that Iran says they're going to do it. It's first of all military conflicts eventually end in diplomacy. Even if it's an unconditional surrender, that's diplomacy. So just like every military, and even like Korea, where it's a stalemate thing sitting there, it's still you needed diplomacy for that. So it's going to end in diplomacy. You don't really have another alternative, right? If nobody can go in for war forever. Okay.
Right.
So based on that, you have to end this in diplomacy, because there's no other way to end the conflict. So how do you do that? One of the things I would say is this: if you are Iran and you're able to kill all of the sanctions, right? So you're Iran, you get rid of all the sanctions. There's this other side of it too, and that is this: Iran's going to be a very rich country. You know what I mean? Think of like Saudi Arabia's rich, or this country's rich. If you end the sanctions, man, they got like some of the biggest gas fields in the world and gigantic oil fields. And oh, by the way, they got a toll booth that's going to pay quite well now. So they're going to be loaded with money. And of course, they can sell their oil through their Russia and China and Global South networks and don't have to fool around with the US anyway and its allies. So Iran can become a very wealthy country, as it is now, not being wealthy. They, as I kept saying, they beat the stuffing out of the US. What Iran can say is this: we already have some tremendous advantages. If we get a deal, we know you're up to no good. So we can harden ourselves. We can make it. Right now, you can't defeat us. And we're going to be really, really rich. And we can make sure that we're militarily we're already one of the most powerful countries in the world, but we can be far more powerful than you. So the other part of it is Iran, at some point, you got to end it in diplomacy. So Iran can say, okay, we're going to get the best deal we can. And then along with our Russian and Chinese friends, because I don't know if you know it, Russia is helping China to build an integrated air defense network. It's going to take several years, but it's going to be really, really good when it's done. Now Iran can say, we're going to harden ourselves so hard that you won't even dream about coming after us again. So I think you got to at some point end it. Let's not pretend that they can just keep this war going forever, but you're going to be really, really rich, and you can dramatically change the dynamics to make it almost impossible for them to come after you again in the same way that they are now. So you got to be realistic about Iran's options. You got to end every war in diplomacy. The question now becomes, how do you do? And that's what Iran has said. We want to end this in making sure that you don't come back and sucker punch us again. But part of that is but we already know you won't go along with it. The other part is what we're going to do to make sure you can't sucker punch us again.
I think the thing is they need time. And like whether it's with China or for that matter, even Iran, the more time you have, the better you have of defending yourself in this case. Meaning, if they can get a deal, whatever that deal is, and it is to their advantage. I mean, I guess, look, my issue is not that they fight forever. I don't want that. The issue is more so is ensuring that the deal is attended to, and I don't know how to do that, short of a conflict that gets across that you can't take us. Meaning it's almost like the fight is necessary just to get across to the U.S. We are not Syria. We're not Venezuela of the Middle East. We're not a country that you could just knock over when you want to knock over, or attack us when you want to attack us. It needs to be that. Whatever that deal is, it needs to ensure that. And I got to be honest, I don't know how you do that short of a conflict that gets across that we're not pushovers. It's just that. It's not that I want them to fight forever. That's not the case. I don't want them to have to fight at all. But here we are. It's just that. I guess
You
I don't
know,
know.
I would question one possibility, and that is that has already happened. That, you know, what we're, you know, you hear after the war, boy, they destroyed our bases a lot worse. Boy, we lost a lot more than we're really telling you, right? And I've got, you know, we've all discussed that. I don't believe the numbers of casualties and stuff like that. But so I think it's possible, I'm not saying for sure, that they've already hit the U.S. so hard that the U.S. doesn't want to another slice of that pie. The other thing about it is this, you know, the issue of internal politics. Man, can you imagine if after this, if a president says, you know, I think I'm going to go back and take another take another bite out of Iran, this friggin' country would erupt. People would be like, oh, whoa. It would be very hard. I mean, Trump had to lie his way into it, and he never got really only over about 30 some percent, really,
Right.
in going with the weapons of mass destruction / ballistic missiles / saving the protesters, whatever. He never really got over 30%, and this was before the United States. I mean, the people watched us get the daylights punched out of us. It will be very difficult for any president, any administration to say, okay, we're going, and it's like $4.60 a gallon right now here, $4.50, $60 a gallon right here. It's going to be real difficult to say to the Americans, let's do this again and see. And as you and I both know, we're at the leading edge of this. Even if they stop the war tomorrow, these tankers have stopped coming. We're going to go up to $5, $6, $7 a gallon. There's no way to stop that, and people are going to go bananas. Me, for one, I might add. So that's the other part. They've inflicted the pain they need to inflict. How will, I think, I don't know, Iran's interesting, because one of the things we say is, you know, Russia and China will probably be necessary to help secure the deal, right? And back the deal. But, you know, Iran's very independent. Iran's a unique country. I get the feeling that Iran's going to be like, no, we don't need Russia and China to. We want to do this on their own. And to some extent, that's worked for them. To some extent, it's really worked for them. I tell you why. Because when they went up against Israel in the 12-day war, and they easily defeated Israel. In 3 days, that war was really over. They just kept going for 12 days with no help from Russia or China. And then they got help from Russia. So what they showed is, Israel's nothing. That's like, you know, flies on a horse's back. But if we're going to go against the U.S., then we're going to need some help. But as far as the intermediary powers, so they showed that they could be dominant without Russia and China, and that if they were going to go against the U.S., they were going to need Russia and China's help. But that should be expected, because the U.S. is supposed to be the dominant power. So they've showed that independently, strategically and militarily, they're a very powerful country. They've also shown that their topography and their geography are tremendous advantages. So I think their independence has been a strength, and it's given them a lot of respect. People are looking at the Lego videos and the people lining up on bridges and saying, hey, man, you know, these people are tough. You don't want to fight these people. So I think they've been successful. What I thought were mistakes in the past, I look at them and I say, they're signs of strength and unity.
They have navigated this skillfully. Agreed. They have, hats off, right? They have navigated this skillfully, especially against a hyperpower that has gone rogue. It's not agreed. They have handled it masterfully. One of the other interesting things that I want to hit, that's also in the Middle East, strangely enough, is Hezbollah taking a chunk out of Israel in southern Lebanon. Now, don't take my word for this. This is Times of Israel, of all places, pointing out that the same or similar FPV drones, the technology that Russia has basically pioneered, using fiber optic wires to use drones to go after people. Hezbollah has been using that against Israel. And Israel, according to the article, does not have a defense for it. And the article is kind of lamenting, like, how did you not foresee this coming? Right? It's like we're trying to commit a genocide in southern Lebanon, and these guys keep fighting back with drones, and they're killing our people. How did we not see this coming. Give me your take on this. I mean, this is pretty wild. Like, the reality of it is, smaller, as technology becomes cheaper, organizations are able to use these things to keep off larger powers. In this case, Israel, and their maniac policy of Greater Israel. I found this to be amazing. What are your thoughts?
Well, there's a single dynamic here, and the Western powers should have seen it coming when the Houthis were able to do the exact same thing. The Houthis,
Yes.
Yemen, right, to the U.S. U.S. sent in all these battle groups, and Trump said the problem with Biden was that he was too weak, and he wouldn't let the Houthis have it, and we're going to let the Houthis have it. And then all of a sudden, F-18 started slipping overboard or something. That was back then they couldn't say laundry room fires. So they hadn't developed the laundry room fire plan yet. So they just slipped overboard. And you notice the unluckiest army in the world, they slip overboard with F-18s. We have laundry room fires, friendly fire. We never, ever get defeated by the enemy. We always have some unfortunate incident, an unfortunate turn of events that we happen to lose planes and things like that. Isn't that interesting? Maybe we need to issue rabbit's feet and horseshoes to our soldiers so they'll get a little bit better luck. But at any rate, and what was it? It was cheap drones that had good range, right? You could keep your enemy away from you far enough that they couldn't really do a lot to you, and you could inflict pain to your enemy. And of course, anybody could get their hands on that. And I'm sure Yemen has friends in the region that help supply them with stuff. And there was an exercise in Eastern Europe, and it was a NATO exercise where they brought in some Iranian drone operators, and then they had the NATO troops, and the NATO troops were supposed to assault them. And in this exercise, the Ukrainian drone operators wiped them all out. I mean, they couldn't even get out of the starting gate. Okay, let's go. Boom, 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 boom. You're all dead. And it was the worst. The face of war is changing. Now, I would imagine that a couple of things happened that probably, since Iran shared its Shahed drone technology with Russia, and that was of great benefit to Russia, I will guarantee you that the Russians, guess what? We found that Ukrainian drone operators are in the Middle East helping to train, the U.S. and its allies. Okay, well, don't you think that the Russians are training and providing hardware to those who help them? And so now that goes to Hezbollah. So now Hezbollah is sitting there with these FPV drones and all these different types of drones that have come, that technology has come from the Ukrainian battlefield, and they're sitting there. And just like NATO, Israel is not ready to fight, to go up against that. And they go out and they put there, and man, they are just getting, slaughtered. They are just getting obliterated, which they got to withdraw. They can't, you know what it reminds me of? This is like the invention of gunpowder and muskets as opposed to bows and arrows and spears. You know what I mean? Yeah. You just can't go in there. I don't care how good your guns are and this. If that guy's got drones, he's going to sit back. He's looking at you through the drones. The drone's going to come buzzing in, and it's going to blow you up, and there's no way to stop it. Israel is not capable of going up against Hezbollah. This is the great equalizer, and right now, Israel, the worst thing they could do is keep fighting because they're getting tore up, man.
Yeah, and that's the rub. And yes, Israel has the capability of killing a lot of people, but it's not about, I keep saying this, it's not about the number of people that you kill.
Right.
It's means to an end, right? Killing is means to an end. It's not the end in of itself. Not usually. Israel is an end to itself. But in the case of southern Lebanon, it's pain that they need to impart. Meaning if they can impart a certain amount of pain, that pain may be enough to effectively get them to leave again.
Because pain serves a couple of purposes. Number one, kinetic, they actually lose personnel and they lose hardware. So, if you're fighting against your enemy and you can degrade the number of personnel they have, the hardware and the tactics they're able to use on the battlefield, now they got to dig in and back down and look for drones all the time. That serves a purpose. The other purpose it serves is this: the defensive party, they expect to take losses. These
Right.
are heroic losses. These are martyrs, right? We're getting attacked by the Zionists, so that we lost. We're celebrated some martyrs. We had more martyrs, and they died for the cause. Whereas Israel is the offensive. That we'll just go in, and we're the fourth most powerful army in the world, and we're going to just go ahead and in here and just beat these people up. Your people expect an easy win, so you now degrade the support, the foundational support inside the country that's attacking. So now the people in Israel start looking at their leaders saying, hey, all of our sons are coming home in boxes. Hey, we're taking a beating. It's like in 2006, Hezbollah won, but they won because they fought them to a standstill. They fought like 30,000 Israeli soldiers to a standstill with like 3,000 or 4,000 fighters, right? Because of course they were defensive in a number of reasons. Now it appears to me they ain't fighting to a standstill. The drone technology is allowing them to get the advantage on the battlefield. And so now when Israel they're like, we're going to take this area and we're going to move in here. Well, that's the worst thing you could do, because now you're a bunch of sitting ducks. And so this is the other part of it. This is, what's interesting? This is in a way showing this is World War III. You've got Iran, you've got Russia, you've got China. They're using their technology. They're transferring it amongst their friends. They're fighting in this battle over here with Russian and Iranian technology. You got Iranian shaheeds. They go to Russia. Russia's using them to hit. You've got China, who's got some gigantic spy ship, and certainly that's being used in targeting and intercept. See what I'm saying? It is World War III. World War III, people are thinking about the old war where there's a column of tanks smash into each other. That can't work anymore. Right. No way. You line up a column of tanks, they will be targeted and they will be immediately annihilated. So you can't ever have that kind of World War III again. This is the iteration of World War III, which is World War III is a war of technology and probably minimal casualties as compared to the old World War. This is a war of technology and strategy and tactics, utilizing the new technology. And whoever can change, just like the computer industry, whoever can advance their technology, institute their technology, strategically spread the technology, they win. And that's what World War III is about.
Yeah, we're at the stage of flying killer robots, which
I never thought about
it's like a black
mirror. You're right.
And wait till they add AI to it. I mean, they've been working with AI for those drones, so the drones can effectively make a determination without a human operator. That's terrifying. Like basically, a drone is flying around, it identify a person, identify a friend or foe, and destroy it if it's a foe, without a person getting involved in it. It's like, yeah, we don't want people, the belabor people. With having to make the decision to kill people, let's just let robots do it.
I think Russians already does. They have some of that in that, like the drones talk to each other.
Yes.
Let's say that a drone finds, there's a bunch of targets or a bunch of things here. It can basically summon the other drones into the area too. So it still is. I think it's at its rudimentary step.
Yes.
And because of what AI is, you're asking for lots of civilian casualties and trouble and potentially friendly fire incidents. So it's going to be hard to institute AI. Maybe when it comes to anti-ship stuff, probably it's a little easier, but you already had that because you already had like way back, you had these missiles. When you fire a salvo of missiles, they communicate. And like one missile has to pop up real high so that it can look and identify the target and then go back down. But it goes up high and then it says, oh, that's the ship we want to hit. All right. As you get closer, you're targeting it. But as it gets closer, it wants to get an optical targeting the closer it gets. And one of the missiles pops up in the salvo, gets the optical targeting of the ship to make sure it's still where the GPS, because you get closer, you might have GPS jamming and all that kind of stuff. And now your GPS doesn't hone you in, but now you get closer, you get optical. This missile pops up. There it is. That's the ship. We're going to hit it, communicates to the other ships. They don't have to pop up to do that. So there's always been that. So the question is, how does that get, how How does that get transferred? But you're right. Bottom line is the technology is making it more and more deadly, and it's making it harder to use ships. It's making it harder to muster well, let's put all of our troops in one spot. And they're like,
Right.
oh boy, yeah, you got them all in one spot. This is going to be easy. Israel's finding that out the hard way.
Couldn't happen to a more rabid, psychopathic colony of squatters. Garland, shout out to you, man. I appreciate you for joining me, Garland Nixon. He is radio host of the Garland Nixon Show. Garland, when is your next show, by the way?
I don't have one scheduled. I'm going to do something later on today, but I don't think I have anything scheduled for today now.
You and I are going to be doing a show on Friday evenings, ideally.
Yes.
Excellent. Badass. I will give notification to the audience about those shows. I always enjoy having you on the show. I always enjoy talking to you. Deeply appreciate this. Thank you, man. Be safe.
All right. Thank you. Always fun. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. We have come to the end. Let's go to our next guest. I see him in the background. Caleb Mauled. If I can bring Caleb Mauled on. Come on.
How's it going?
There we are. It's going fine. How you doing, Caleb? You doing all right?
I'm great. Yeah.
Come on. There we are. Having technical difficulties. Yeah, I'm glad you could join me, man. And just for the audience to know, Caleb Mauled, Caleb, I now am stuck with glasses. I went 48 years of my life without them, and damn it, caught me. Caleb Mauled is a speaker, writer, journalist, political analyst, and author. He's director for Center for Political Innovation. They are an active group that protests, put out literature that educate. And Caleb is the director of that organization. Caleb, I'm glad that you could join me, man. Welcome to the show.
Sure. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you. Caleb, I was looking at one of the other issues. I was talking to Garland about what was taking place in regards to Israel. The other issue that I'm fascinated by, and we might as well talk about since it's happening right now, Arachi, foreign minister for Iran, is in China. I would love to be a fly on the wall for that particular conversation. And for that matter, a fly on the wall in the conversation he had with the Russians. Where do you think this is going? I mean, for all intents and purposes, Donald Trump is supposed to go next week. Iran has been making the rounds with Oman, Russia, China, etc. Arachi has been all over the place. What do you think he's trying to get out of the Chinese in this conversation? I mean, what do you think he's trying to get out of this conversation from the Chinese?
Well, at this point, I think it's fair to say that Iran is working very, very hard to not be isolated because the United States is isolated. Excuse me. The United States is isolated right now. Everybody knows this blocking of the Strait of Hormuz that is making the global economy scream is the fault of the United States. The United States launched an unprovoked attack against the Islamic Republic of Iran, murdered the supreme leader, blew up a girls' elementary school in Manab. I mean, the USA provoked this entire situation. There was no imminent threat. There was no justification whatsoever. The United States just went out of its way to attack Iran on the bidding of Israel. It looks like Netanyahu called up Trump and said, let's go get Iran. And now Iran has to retaliate, and they have to retaliate in the way that any other country would. They can't just back down. You killed this supreme leader. You killed all kinds of civilians. You just bombed the country at a time when they were negotiating. So in response to that, Iran has taken dramatic moves. They've closed the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. And global economy is very much affected by this. And Washington is trying to isolate Iran, and Iran has to make sure they're not isolated. And China gets a lot of oil from Iran. And part of this attack is the USA wants to get oil leverage over China, right? China is one of its weaknesses is that it's an oil importing country. And Iran and Venezuela are both countries that give oil, sell oil to China. And they do so without the U.S.'s approval and oversight. The USA would like neither country to be able to export oil. And so, we saw the USA, go into Venezuela, kidnap the leader, and has Venezuela in a very bad spot. And now the USA is attacking Iran. And China is also a target of all of this. We have to remember that they want to weaken China, make China reliant on oil imports from countries that the United States can have leverage over. But Iran and Venezuela are both very independent countries that China was getting oil from. So China is just as much a target of this. I guess they're not directly being bombed, but it's about their access to oil. That's an issue here. So the foreign minister of Iran is in China. China is very well connected in the global economy. China, with the Belt and Road Initiative and all kinds of rising and developing economies have ties to China. China builds infrastructure all over the world. And it's about making sure that Iran is not isolated and making sure that the United States isn't able to kind of play the high ground and say, look, we're just trying to protect the global economy, free flow of oil. No, you murdered an elected official, the top religious leader of Iran. You attacked Iran without any provocation, and Iran has to respond. And Iran has some pretty clear demands. They want the U.S. bases out of the region. And that's what this is all about. I will say the Gulf states are embarrassingly revealing themselves to just be puppets of the West because, if they claim to support the Palestinians, the way Iran is being targeted now on behalf of Israel, all that Iran has done is target U.S. bases that are on the territories of these countries, right? These countries have hosted U.S. bases with which the United States threatens and surrounds Iran. And the Gulf states are just revealing as they go along with this attack on Iran. Saudi Arabia in particular. Saudi Arabia really tries to play up the idea that they're a friend of the Palestinians. But the way they're cooperating with the attack against Iran, they're just kind of revealing themselves to be puppets.
Yeah, but wasn't it understood that they were puppets? I mean, this is not necessarily a reveal. They were always obsequious to America. Or do you disagree with that?
No, I agree with you. Saudi Arabia was beginning. There's elements of independence there. It's interesting. I guess I point out that they're puppets, first of all, because Israel likes to play this game where all the Muslim countries are all secretly together and all plotting against Israel. Zionists try to pretend that Saudi Arabia is somehow, plotting against them when Saudi Arabia and Israel have cooperated throughout the region for regime change efforts. So we have to be clear about that, right? And that there's a lot of confusion, especially like neocon conservatives have it in their head that because Saudi Arabia maintains an autocratic system, because it's very much Wahhabi Islam, it must somehow be fighting the West, which it's not doing. I mean, the Saudi monarchy was appointed by the British Empire, and they've kind of been vassals of the West. But we have seen kind of a new layer of independence. Saudi Arabia and Iran reestablished diplomatic relations a couple of years ago with the help of China. And Saudi Arabia refused to go all in against Russia the way Joe Biden would have wanted. Joe Biden was kind of begging Saudi Arabia to go all in against Russia. They couldn't do that because they're a major oil exporting country, and so is Russia. And the Crown Prince needed to be able to have a line of communication with Russian President Putin to negotiate oil price output. So Saudi Arabia hasn't been as fully in the U.S. camp as they have been, previously, but they still are basically just an outpost of the Western system, and that's important to point out. And at this point, they're playing a quite negative role. So yeah, I think that's important to be aware of. But yeah, when it really gets down to it, Saudi Arabia, it exports a huge amount of oil. Its oil industry is run by American, super majors, ExxonMobil, BP, Shell, and Chevron. It purchases a huge amount of American weapons. It's kind of a trade-off, and there's not much of an economy in Saudi Arabia other than oil and weapons, right? It's a country with oil and sand, basically, and that a third of the country are guest workers, slaves that have no rights, and it's basically the country is the property of the royal family that got the Arabian Peninsula in the Sykes-Picot Agreement after World War I. And the borders were redrawn, and that's what we got. And the House of Saud, based on the Wahhabi interpretation of Islam, they got that chunk of territory because the British Empire and the French and the Americans drew the borders of the modern Middle East at the end of World War I with the Sykes-Picot Agreement. It was the Bolsheviks who revealed 1919, right? The Bolsheviks took power. And they leaked the secret treaty through which the Western colonizers had drawn the borders of the new Middle East. So those borders are not real. There is one Arab people. There's one people that speak Arabic. that live in that region, etc. But they were, the borders were drawn arbitrarily. The French got Syria. The British found various monarchs that they appointed, and they divided up. They gave Kuwait to one royal family. They gave Jordan to one royal family. They gave Saudi Arabia and the Arabian Peninsula to one royal family that were all puppets of the British. Those borders are not real borders. These are borders that were drawn up among the imperialists for their own reasons. And there is one Arab people, and the vision, the dream of a united Arab republic, I think, still remains. And that's what Gaddafi certainly advocated. That's what Saddam Hussein advocated. That's what the Ba'ath movement advocated. And I don't think that dream has died. I think the Arab people do want to have one unified state. They are one people.
Okay, two things. The Saudi Arabia thing, correct me if I'm wrong. MBS took that position during, this doesn't ultimately matter, but I do want to get your point of view on it. MBS took that particular position during the Biden administration because Joe Biden, when he got in office, saying, I'm not going to shake his hand. I'm not even going to address him. I'm going to talk to his dad. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, when Joe Biden got in office, he went to talk to his dad. He didn't go to talk to MBS. And you can imagine that this was somewhat of a magnificent insult on the world stage. Joe Biden, I think, gave him a fist bump when he got back into the country. It was stuff like that, right? And so when Joe Biden goes and it's like, hey, I need you to increase oil production, and then they cut it, it seems like that was in response to the way Joe Biden was behaving when he was coming into office. Or do you think that's the case? Or do you think it had more to do with the association with Russia?
Well, I think, okay, so there's a couple layers to this. Now, I'm talking about when the special military operation was launched. Joe Biden went to Saudi Arabia and basically wanted them to just do an all-out boycott of Russia. And right. Saudi Arabia was one of many countries that the USA expected to just go all in against Russia that refused. There was also India. India didn't go along with it. Turkey. There were a number of countries that weren't on Russia's side per se. They just weren't willing to go along with it. Now, the other thing that's important to keep in mind, though, is that the liberal wing of American politics has had kind of a strange relationship with Saudi Arabia. You remember when Obama visited Saudi Arabia, Michelle Obama refused to wear a headscarf. And that was a statement. I remember when the king of Saudi Arabia died and, Obama was still president and Samantha Power was the UN ambassador, the statements that were given were, a little less than, what you would expect. They weren't completely sympathetic to Saudi Arabia. And the other thing is that, Saudi Arabia, they're Republicans. Generally in American politics, there's this whole thing about foreign meddling in American politics. It's such a joke. The Saudis and all kinds of countries are invested in American politics, and the Saudis are generally Republicans. Very famous incident, 1984, the presidential election. You had Muhammad Ali, the boxer, endorsed Ronald Reagan. And you remember that? That was a strange incident. People are wondering why in the world, Muhammad Ali is a black nationalist, converted to Islam, refused to fight in Vietnam. Why did he endorse Ronald Reagan? Well, he said Ronald Reagan wants to keep prayer in school. That's enough. But that's not what it was really about. What it was about is that Muhammad Ali, he had joined the Nation of Islam, and the Nation of Islam had liquidated after the death of Elijah Muhammad. Elijah Muhammad's son, Wallace Farad, or Wallace Muhammad, became the leader, and Wallace Muhammad converted to Wahhabism. He became a Sunni Wahhabi, and the Sunnis were funding the organization the Nation of Islam liquidated, right, and became Sunni Wahhabis that were funded by Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia are Republicans, and they were for Ronald Reagan, and so that's why Muhammad Ali endorsed Ronald Reagan in the 1984 presidential election. Now, Minister Farrakhan broke with the regular Nation of Islam that had liquidated, and he refounded the Nation of Islam as a black nationalist group, and that was with funding from Gaddafi. So the group that now calls itself the Nation of Islam and has Final Call newspaper is like the reboot that was started by Louis Farrakhan after the original Nation of Islam liquidated and became Wahhabis. It's a whole wild story, there. But that's why Muhammad Ali endorsed Ronald Reagan in 1984, because the Saudis are Republicans, and they have been. I mean, you can read about the Bush family in particular. It was very, very close to Saudi Arabia. and that the Muslim Brotherhood, and this is where it gets interesting, the Muslim Brotherhood tends to be a liberal thing. The Muslim Brotherhood is illegal in Saudi Arabia, and the Muslim Brotherhood does not get along with Saudi Arabia very much, and that's who the liberals like. Obama's presidency was all about the Muslim Brotherhood. Al Jazeera is the TV network that echoes the Muslim Brotherhood line. The Qatari monarchy and Turkey, they have their position, and they're very much they're what you might call westernized Sunnis. They're very much, you know, kind of a very Western and kind of liberal interpretation of Islam. And they very much see Saudi Arabia as authoritarian, and they don't like Saudi Arabia very much. And that's who the liberals tend to pander to. And during the Arab Spring, Obama utilized the what you call the Muslim Brotherhood linked wing of Islam very much. They were a big part of the Arab Spring. They had the energy in the streets, etc. So these kind of rivalries play out. And, you know, Trump has talked about outlawing and declaring the Muslim Brotherhood to be a terrorist organization. The Muslim Brotherhood has become less and less friendly to the United States, you know, especially in light of the Israel and everything that's happened, you know, in the last few years with Israel's, you know, genocidal attack on the Palestinians. So, you know, the Democrats tend to pander to the Muslim Brotherhood. Republicans tend to pander to the Saudis. And that's kind of the division in the Muslim world. It's something that, again, a lot of neocon Republicans would be shocked by, because, you know, Saudi Arabia is certainly a totalitarian state if there ever was one. It's certainly not a model of Western liberalism, but that's who Republicans tend to align with, whereas Democrats tend to align with the Muslim Brotherhood.
I want to move or slide to an issue that's also related to this. Yesterday, apparently, there was an attack on the UAE. I mean, this was in response to the U.S. effectively going with this idea of a freedom project, claiming freedom of navigation through the Strait of Hormuz. Now, this seemed to be a bit of kabuki theater. With, I think, 2 ships got through. They were fired upon. There was a warship that tried to get through. It was fired upon. Apparently, that wasn't the first time it was fired upon. And UAE takes a hit in the pipeline that tried to get around the Strait of Hormuz. Where do you think this goes? Because the reality of it is, Donald Trump claimed he's all over the place. He looks very shambolic. It looks like a very chaotic an administration in complete disarray without any strategic vision associated with what's taking place. It's purely reactive and not reacting well, meaning I don't see the way out. And I don't know if I don't see it. It doesn't seem like the administration, damn sure, doesn't see one out. Where do you think this ultimately goes?
I honestly don't know. Trump is in an alternate reality, and the way he's talking when he claims that, he's claiming that, oh, we already control the Strait of Hormuz. Iran has no navy. No, Iran is controlling the Strait of Hormuz. That's very, very clear. It's not open. Countries can't just go in as they choose. Iran is in total control. The USA would like to reassert control of it, but they don't have it. And they don't know what they're doing. And I listened to Marco Rubio talk. I mean, Marco Rubio, he just gets up and says false things, very, very false things about the world and what's going on right now. I listened to him talk. I mean, he's just not presenting a realistic thing. He's claiming, for example, that they're not blocking Cuba from importing oil. Yes, they are. The whole world can see that Cuba would like to import oil, not just from Venezuela, but from anybody else, and the USA is preventing that, and that is causing a big humanitarian crisis on the island of Cuba. But Marco Rubio says, no, we're not doing that. It's just communism is bad. That's the only problem that they have, and he goes on to say other false things about Cuba. I mean, it's just ridiculous the way Marco Rubio gets up there and just says false things. Are you going to play the clip or?
Yeah. He lies miserably. Well, he's effectively a community to help us undo the Strait of Hormuz. And it's like, and then he's like, it's outrageous that Iran will be able to take the strait. And it's like, are you serious right now? Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, my assumption is that hostilities at some point resume, but I don't see how that changes anything. Like meaning, I hope you understand what I mean. It's a thicket that the U.S. has gotten itself into that it didn't need to get itself into. No, I agree with you. We have about 2 or 3 more minutes. May Day, or not May Day, I'm sorry, Victory Day is coming up on May 9th.
Yep.
Thoughts?
Well, it's important. The Second World War is something that is largely erased from American memory. The fact that we teamed up with Russia and with the Chinese people and with the Korean people and with all the peoples of Eastern Europe to oppose fascism. The fact that the Soviet Union was building a global anti-fascist alliance. 1935 at the 7th World Congress of the Communist International, Georgy Dimitrov said we need to focus on defeating fascism, and the Soviet Union was raising the alarm of anti-fascism while the Western countries left the Spanish Republic to get crushed by Franco. And they passed the Neutrality Act, and the Western countries didn't do anything really, and were kind of enabling and empowering Hitler because they saw him as a vehicle against communism. And, even when the war began, I mean, the Soviet Union fought that second front. They didn't get a second front until 1944. They fought Hitler alone on the European mainland year after year. They were invaded, they were attacked, and millions gave their lives battling Hitler. And D-Day wasn't until June of 1944. So the sacrifice of the Soviet people in fighting against Hitler is something that the world, has largely tried to erase and forget. I have this book I wrote, The Battle for Soviet History and Why It Matters. There's a special episode of Tara Reid's new show that's going to air about this book. I sat down with Tara Reid and Olga Bataman when I was in Moscow a couple weeks ago. We filmed a special episode about this book, but they have done everything they can to denigrate the history of the Soviet Union, to lie about the Soviet Union and its achievements, and to obscure the fact that they fought Hitler. The Soviet Union was key in the struggle to defeat the Nazis. And coming out of the Second World War, the global communist movement that was aligned with the Soviet Union surged ahead because they had so much credibility, because they had been the anti-fascist resistance on the Korean Peninsula, within Japan itself, within Germany. They had been La Resistance in France. They had been the anti-fascists. Little known fact, during the McCarthy period, they had different categories for people that might be considered subversives, right? If you're a communist, that meant you were a member of the party. If you were a fellow traveler, that meant you were a friend of the party. One of the categories they had was premature anti-fascist. If you were a premature anti-fascist, meaning you were anti-fascist before that was cool, before that was okay. That was a category that you were a subversive and untrustworthy person. Think about that, right? Premature anti-fascist. Well, that's because it was the communists that were leading the fight against fascism.
That's wild. I mean, people may forget, but 90% of the Nazis that were killed on the Eastern Front. So, yeah. Caleb, you are fantastic, man. Your breadth of knowledge of this stuff is just always impresses me. And I know I say it all the time, but I do mean it. Thank you for this. I'm Caleb Mauled. He is speaker, writer, journalist, political analyst, author, prolific author, I would add. He is director for Center for Political Innovation. Caleb, what's any books you want to? You have so many.
Sure. Yeah, well, I'm always putting out different material, but I've got a website, calebmoppenbooks.net. You can read all about my different books. I'm with the Center for Political Innovation, cpiusa.org. We're always doing different stuff, looking forward to different things. We just launched a Juche study group. My friend Noah Shank put out this book, Juche for American Workers. That's the writings of Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il. And we're having weekly study sessions on my YouTube channel about Juche ideology from North Korea. And we're always doing different stuff, and different activities are being planned. So check us out. Get involved in anti-imperialism. We got to build an anti-imperialist movement. That is the urgent necessity of the hour.
Caleb, you're fantastic, man. You be safe. Have a good one, okay?
Yep.
Bye-bye. All right. We have come to the end. Let's see. Make sure there are no more chats, or let's read any chats that we have. And we have one more. Frank Friel. Frank Friel, great show, Jamal. A military seems to get outsmarted at every turn. Do our generation suck? No, it's not the generation that sucks. It's the leadership that sucks. Look, if you have a military that defends your homeland, that's one thing, right? It's another one when you have a military that is effectively geared towards attacking other nations. That's different. That's different. Yeah, it's that. I don't think it's the military that sucks. It's not. The failing is not the military. The failure is civilian leadership that's telling the military to effectively go out and commit crimes. It's that. I'm going to end this. I'm going to deprogram. We're going to start at 9 o'clock. I want to thank all of you for joining me. I'm going to say like, share, subscribe, and I will see you guys bright and early tomorrow morning and on deprogram coming up right now. Have a good one, all. Be safe.